So what I'm starting to find as far as getting a good success rate when propagating these is that timing, heat, and humidity are far more important than the... What's up, Lazy Dog fam? Hope all y'all are having a fantastic day. It is Friday, November 10th here in South Georgia, and on today's video we're going to do a little figging around. I'm going to show you what I've been busy doing over the last month here in the greenhouse behind me, and I'm also going to share some tips and tricks that I've learned over the last month or so as far as propagation goes. Things that I thought were necessary may not be as necessary, and the way we've done things a little different this year. So let's start out by seeing what we've got going on in here. We've got this little 10 by 16 greenhouse absolutely slam packed with baby fig trees. If I had any more in here, I wouldn't be able to walk around in water. Every year I find ways to fit a little more in here, but I think we're at our max now. And I know I need a bigger greenhouse. I've been thinking about that a lot lately, but I also realize we're not going to be on this property forever. We're quickly outgrowing our little brick house we have here. We're done having kids, but as the kids grow up, that house gets smaller and smaller and smaller. So we've been looking at properties, been looking at houses. Don't know that anything's going to happen anytime soon, but back to the greenhouse. I don't want to build a new greenhouse or put up a substantially larger greenhouse until I decide that's where I'm going to be for a while. But what I can do, assuming we don't find any properties or houses we like within the next year or so, is I can extend the length of this one. So I was talking to the folks at Atlas Manufacturing the other day where we got this greenhouse, and they said they make a kit. You can basically make this one 11 foot longer. So we go from 16 foot long to about, I don't know, 36, 37 foot long. I think I've got enough room to do that there, so that's an option as well. But anyways, back to what we've got going on in here. We've got all the varieties that we had on our site last year, plus at least 7 or 8 new varieties. Those are the ones with the orange tags there. I haven't gotten Lazy Dog Farm tags printed for those yet. So lots of new stuff coming in addition to the varieties we had last year. And based on what we've heard from folks over the last year, we've also adjusted our propagation quantities of each variety a little bit. For example, this Malta Black variety here was one of the most requested varieties last year, but we were kind of limited on those. So I've started a bunch more of those this year. That way, hopefully everybody that wants one can get one. And so as we look around in here, you'll see kind of different stages of growth, because obviously we didn't do all this in one day. It took about a month to do this many figs. So we've got those brown turkeys there that we started first. Those are looking really great. Lots of nice leaves on those. And we got some that are just now putting on leaves, like those LSU Gold starts right there. And then others like this improved Celeste variety here that's just starting to pop a little bit. And we've got some that we've started just a week or so ago that have yet to show any buds. And while we're in here, real quick, we've had a lot of people asking about these little racks that we use here. Now, those shelves up there came with the greenhouse, but we have since added all these racks. These are called Dunnage racks. You'll see them a lot of times outside convenience stores or big box stores holding, you know, 24 packs of water bottles, all kind of heavy stuff. Get these off Amazon, and I really like them. They're different shapes or sizes you can get. I think these are about 5 foot long or so, about 2 foot wide, and I think they have like a couple 1,000-pound weight capacity, so I could put a lot more on them than I have on them. I really like these things for inside the greenhouse. So now let's talk about our propagation methods a little bit this year. So over the last couple of years, we've done several videos on fig propagation, and it seems like each one of those videos is a little bit different because our propagation methods evolve over the years as we try new things, experiment with different things, and find ways to improve our success rate. Now, it's important to note that getting 100% take rate on these cuttings is fairly unrealistic, but we have been able to drastically increase our percentages over the years. We look at those trays right there. I'm going to end up getting close to 95% on those, which I'm tickled about. When we started doing all this, we were getting around 60%. Now we can get up there in the 90s. So what I'm starting to find as far as getting a good success rate when propagating these is that timing, heat, and humidity are far more important than the prep of the cutting itself. So last year I started all my cuttings in November, Did them all throughout the month of November, but this year I started them all in October. So we got started right at the beginning of October, did so many trees per day, and we were pretty much done by the end of October, very early November. What I found is that these things root much faster in October than they do in November when it cools down even more. So having those warmer outside temps really helps. Now we do sacrifice some late fig production by taking cuttings in October. We also sacrifice a little bit of growth on our trees, but it's worth it in my opinion because we can get these up and going so much faster, and we'll have a much bigger tree come April when it comes time to start shipping all these things. So we get asked all the time, when should I take cuttings from my fig tree? And yes, you can take cuttings in the winter once the tree goes completely dormant, but it seems like it takes a lot longer for them to kind of wake up and start budding again. So I would recommend, if you want some really fast propagation rates, taking your cuttings before the trees go dormant, and you can get these things up and going in just a few weeks. So timing seems to make a huge difference as far as getting these things growing fast. The other thing I found makes a big difference is picking a good piece of wood for your cutting. As I've told you in the past, I prefer to start my cuttings with new wood or this year's growth versus using older wood like this right here. Now I can still make a fig tree out of this, but I can make a fig tree a lot faster with this new wood here. So when I'm taking cuttings, I try to get cuttings that look like this versus ones that look like this. So even though this cutting here is still a little bit green, it really hasn't lignified, and it has some leaf growth at the top, this is what I really like to use. So I just cut that leaf growth off the top there, and this is what I will put in my little pots. And since we're talking about this, I figured I'd share something I read on a fig forum the other day. There was a guy on there complaining that he had bought some cuttings from a buyer, and the buyer sent him all green cuttings like this, and that's not what he wanted. And I replied and said, I actually love green cuttings because they get up and going much faster than these old wood cuttings. But I guess some people will order cuttings and they don't plan on starting them soon. Maybe they just put them in the fridge for a while and start them next spring. And these older ones will store pretty well in the fridge for a while throughout the winter. These green cuttings will not. So just know, if you're going to take some of these green cuttings like we like to do, you need to get them going pretty quick. Now in the past, we've talked a lot about prepping your cutting before you stick it into some soil. We've talked about scoring the bottom of the cutting there just slightly. I did that last year. I quit doing that this year, and I haven't noticed any significant difference in my success rates. So I'm no longer scoring the bottom there. Earlier this year, the first few trays I did, I was still taking a little piece of the bark off the bottom of the cutting. So it looks like that right there. But after I did the first few trays, I said, man, my process would really be sped up if I didn't have to do that right there. So I quit doing that, and hasn't made any difference. Still getting really good success rates in there. So I'm no longer doing any kind of knife work on the bottom of these cuttings. Now I do still take all my cuttings and soak them in a bucket of water for at least 15 minutes and then dip the bottom in this rooting hormone here. I haven't gotten quite brave enough to test excluding the root hormone just yet, so we're using the rooting hormone still on every single one, but we have changed the way we do the tops of the cuttings. So in the past, we've used this wax tape here, also called buddy tape, to wrap the top of the cuttings like you see here, and that keeps them from drying out until they get some roots and leaves going. So this wax tape works really good, but the problem with this stuff is it's about 35 bucks for one of these little rolls, and when you're doing as many cuttings as we've done, you can burn through this stuff really fast. And so what I've started doing is dipping the tips in hot wax. So I've got this little wax melter here, and this is basically the same things people use to make the house smell good. The wax isn't melted right now. I'm just using some standard paraffin wax, and I get this thing hot, get it melted, and dip the tips in there. And so here you can kind of see the difference between the tape and the wax. So that one there has tape on it, that one there has wax on it. I think it was this exact tray right here that I was working on when I had this wax revelation. So I had heard of growers using wax instead of tape. We've even had a few viewers suggest me trying the wax instead of tape. My wife has even said, why don't you try wax instead of tape? And I don't know why I took so long to give it a try, but I'm so glad I did. It's so much faster just dipping them in the wax. I do have to plan ahead because it takes about an hour for the wax in that bowl to melt completely. But as long as I plan ahead, man, my process is so much faster and it doesn't hurt your hands near as bad. You do 100 or 200 of those a day and you're wrapping with that tape, you eventually, your hands will just kind of start cramping up on you. So I would highly recommend the wax if you've got one of those little wax melters. If you don't, I found that one on Amazon for, I don't know, 10, 15 bucks. So via some somewhat nervous experimentation, we have learned that we can cut out parts of our process this year. Some of the things we were doing weren't necessary at all. We've also learned to speed up some parts of the process. Now, the one other thing that I've learned, mainly from just talking to other people who are trying to propagate figs, is that the media or the soil you use is very, very important. Now, y'all know I love my ProMix, and I'll use it for, you know, starting vegetable transplants and the figs, but I think it is extremely important when it comes to propagating figs. When you're starting these things, you don't want to keep this soil too wet, or these little sticks here will rot on you before they get going. The ProMix makes it kind of dummy proof because this stuff stays nice and moist, but it doesn't get too wet. It drains pretty well too. So I swear by the ProMix when it comes to fig propagation. I know it's not easy to find in the big bales like we can get it locally here, but if you're going to do some fig propagation, try to get your hands on some ProMix. It'll solve a lot of the issues you could have if you used a different kind of media. So we've just been giving these a very light splash every day just to keep that soil moist. And then once they get a nice root ball in these 2.5 inch pots like those brown turkey trees almost have, that's when we'll start stepping them up to these larger pots that we use for shipping. We've also had a lot of people asking about if and when we're going to take pre-orders for these. And yes, we will start taking pre-orders once I start stepping up some to these larger pots and I've got a better idea of my inventory and how many of these cuttings actually take root. The last thing I want to do is sell a fig tree I don't have. So once I get a better idea of my inventory, probably early next year, we will put these things on pre-sale. And then as far as what's going on out here in the orchard, the trees that I haven't pruned completely still have a few leaves on them. We're still getting some late figs, like these Salem dark figs here, absolutely delicious. That's a variety we'll have a lot more of this coming year. Some of the trees, when I was taking cuttings, you know, they pretty much got completely pruned, like this Canadria tree we did on a previous video, or like some of those Mary Lane trees back there. So they're good to go for the winter. I won't need to do anything else to those. Some of them I didn't completely prune them when I was taking cuttings, like this Violet de Bordeaux tree here. Probably will do a little bit more pruning on that one here in the next month or so. And then coming soon, hopefully on a video next week, we're going to be talking about winter care for fig trees. Is that something you need to be worried about? What can you do to protect your fig tree throughout the winter so it doesn't die all the way back to the ground? We're going to try to cover all the bases there. So I hope you enjoyed the video today. Don't forget to go check out our website, lazydogfarm.com. You can see most of the varieties we'll have available next year. Still got, like I said, 7 or 8 more to add there over the next couple months. And if you missed that video we did on pruning fig trees, you can see that right here. We'll show you what we do to a small tree versus an older established tree. So check that out, and we'll see you next time right here at Lazy Dog Farm.